Foreign Minister Linkevicius. Excellency, we're very happy to have you with us, pardon me. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to our colleague, Mr. Linas, who is a figure at least to the Israeli side of this audience. It's very well known, and I may say without fear of contradiction, needs very little introduction. David, the microphone is yours, and we can begin.
Good morning. Welcome, of course, Foreign Minister. And I don't want to take any time from the Foreign Minister, we know that the time is short, but I just wanted to say that the relations between Israel and Lithuania are laden with two elements which are both very important. One of them is history, the other is memory. And the thing is that sometimes history and memory are very contradictory, very opposite. We remember, yes, what we choose to remember, but as the time passes, historians write histories, and of course histories are changed also by the present. I'm sure that history and memory are very, very important to the present, but I think that the future and the evolving relations between the two countries, Israel and Lithuania, as the relations are also between Israel and the whole center of Europe. And I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that Lithuania is the center of Europe. The point of the center of Europe lies in Lithuania. Are very, very important to our government, to our country, to our culture, to our Jewish tradition. I think it may not be wrong to say that outside Lithuania, perhaps in Israel, that the most alive remembering of Lithuania, especially for example in Jerusalem, Ponivich, Vilnius, and all these names are not names of the past, but are names of the very present of our Jewish life in Jerusalem and in Israel. So I want to invite you to say some things, and then we'll have also time for discussion. Please.
Good morning everyone. Very good to see all of you. Some of you are meeting not for the first time, not the last time I believe, also as well. And thank you for this nice introduction. And you mentioned some interesting expose saying that we are dependent on memory and history. I would add one more component, it's future. And it's not less important. So important to remember, important to make sure that our young generation will know everything what happened, but not less important to meet future challenges and to exchange views, to discuss values, to discuss where we're coming from, what we're going to do together, being small or big, being in the center of Europe, as you said, or supposed to be in the center, understanding that maybe not all the time we can make a difference because of our potential and power, but really we can add our efforts to the positive decisions. And these days, this visit also quite symbolic that our delegation is also comprehensive, I would say. It's not just political dimension. We have the leader of our Lithuanian Jewish community, Paina Pulansky, she's coming here just in the timing. Also, Mr. Humelis from business community, he's leading Chamber of Commerce, Israeli-Lithuanian Chamber of Commerce. Also, very interesting view. We have really covering all so to say, all aspects. Even I would mention basketball, because we started by basketball game, came here the day before yesterday, just straight to the Maccabi Palace. It was a pleasure, I would say. But even basketball, and some of you have had a chance to walk down the beach in Tel Aviv, you would not be surprised to see so many Lithuanian flags. Because the fan zone, the occupied, so to say, part of a very prestigious place, and with the extremely warm hospitality by the hosts. Once again, we are feeling really at the moment. I would say one more interesting feeling. You know, Litvaks. You know this term, of course. Many of you are also Litvaks, considering themselves as a part of my country, and we are considering more and more them as a part of lost period of time, but not lost history, not lost heritage. And I'm really happy that some private initiatives emerging and some projects not backed or not run by government, by public, taking place, recreating some fragments of common history in Lithuania. And for instance, there is a project in our small town, Šeduva, called Lost Shtetl, where community, I did something wrong. Very, so to say, small but very vibrant community lived there, and private initiatives recreated the cemetery. I believe the nicest in Europe, really, I can tell you. And they raised 3 million euros. They did that on their own. This is just one example of those very important, strong bonds. And this is also leads not only for the memory and history, but also for the future. But of course, we are having here political discussions. We're enjoying very good the period of our relationship with Israel. Time is not easy. Who am I to tell you? And we discussed in the course of these meetings situation in the Middle East, of course, in Syria, elsewhere. I'm trying to provide information from my so to say, region, which is also not calm, unfortunately. And here it comes to the common approach. Analysis of the situation when in the 21st century, policy made using arguments of power, even weapons, efforts to withdraw borders, to change borders, to make deals. To make deal, it sounds quite pragmatic and logical, but if it's done at the expense of values, it's quite risky. And it reminds and smells like cynicism. And you know, there's history. History also should remind us. There were deals made even before war. You know, 1938, Prime Minister Chamberlain came, showed to the people signature of Hitler and said, look, I brought peace to you. Hitler signed, it will be okay. Now, of course, the sacrifice of Czechoslovakia at that time, Sudetenland, was just an avoidable step, but he brought peace. He showed signature of Hitler. But we know there were pacts between Hitler and Stalin. We know what was with Europe, what was with my country, with many countries representing here, and there were more lessons not learned by us. Surprise! Nobody taking lessons from the history. Not going so far ago, let's remember 2008, I know he was ambassador of Georgia, and we all said that, look, annexation of sovereign state is not a good thing. And it cannot be without consequences, with little price. And the price was very little. An aggressor took some part of the land of neighboring, of the sovereign country, and in 1 month maybe we forgot everything and got back to the business as usual because of pragmatic approach, because of this balanced approach, pragmatic, flexible, having in mind that deals are important, economy and trade important. Of course, who can argue? Of course it's important. But we said, look, it's very dangerous, it will be repeated somewhere else. I was among those who said that, look, Crimea is coming, and Transnistria not yet coming, but you will see. There were already statements made by Russia criticizing Moldovan government, which is also a very difficult situation. The government, Moldovan government, stating and claiming that foreign troops should leave Transnistria. And the Russian position is very detrimental to the disbalanced situation in the region. It's happening now as we speak. We don't know Crimea, what to do with Crimea. It's occupied, and basically we see no way out of the situation. And there are even some voices, again, pragmatic voices, to say, look, it's done deal, it's reality. It's bad what is happening, but we should take it as a reality. It reminds me of something. History, memory, and these days reminds. So we can share our own views. I know that since Israel lives in very difficult situations surrounded by not easy neighbors, deals are important, but just my point, be careful when making deals with somebody who is ready to sacrifice something which is very, very, very precious to all of us, and that's really the case. So a lot of things to discuss. And now we're coming to the point where in European Union we're also talking about our future. What will be our future? What will be our challenges ahead? Are we going to have this multi-speed, or are we going to be inclusive as possible? Also not easy to make the conclusions here, but we are trying, of course. But again, stress test happening. Stress test to our Atlantic cohesion, to European also strength and unity. And if we will go through that stronger, we will win. But it's not a given, because time of political comfort is over. Those who think that something happening has nothing to do with themselves, they are wrong, simply. Be it migration, be it terrorism, be it something else. So if it's not yet here, it doesn't mean that it's not at all. And it will be a big mistake to think otherwise. So maybe that's also the reason why it's important to meet, to talk, even being in the remote distance between themselves, but to share experience and try to think, are we ready to meet future challenges? Are we really ready to take responsibility? Do we have leadership? These days we're talking about leadership, and we're blaming anyone but not us. Sometimes there's something happening and people do not trust governments, people do not believe what governments are doing, and people taking decisions guided by emotions but not arguments sometimes. I don't know whether it's somebody from UK, so I really do not want to offend, but Brexit in my view was also emotionally guided decision, not very rational. It's up to Brits to make these decisions, of course, but really that was example of how it could be done emotionally, how it could be done without proper information, a decision which had consequences to the UK, basically, but also for European Union. There are many examples like that also, when powers like radicals, nationalists taking over, and we're surprised why it's happening, because lack of leadership. And in the absence of leadership, this vacuum is filled with the forces which we will not be very happy to see, but this is the fact. So time to think about that, time to share responsibility and to think what will be in the future. We can endlessly complain, but we should find our own responsibility as well. Again, regardless, are we big or small, because this is not measured by the size of the countries, measured by the experience, by approach, by the attitude. Mr. Moderator, I don't know the genre of your event. Should I entertain you while you will be speaking? Or I would prefer dialogue, because as you can feel, I can speak long. Which is, of course, not a problem, but better to talk about something what will be maybe interesting for you. Maybe I'll be happy to answer some questions. There are some questions.
I just joined you here.
Yes.
And maybe the question, Professor Bauer.
Thank you very much for your very interesting and informative speech. I have the usual three questions. We always ask to try us.
Good.
But my two first questions contradict each other. The first one relates to the continued existence in Lithuania of attempts to deny that most of Lithuanian Jews were murdered under German auspices, a German initiative by Lithuanians. And the continued denial of that expresses itself, as you well know, in very unpleasant forms. Just 5 years ago, the burial of Linkevicius, the Prime Minister of a short-lived Lithuanian government under German auspices in Kaunas, who used his short term in order to arrange for the establishment of the execution site on 7th Fort in Kaunas, and did everything he could in order to put the Jews in the ghetto in Kona. And there are many other cases like that. Now, how strong is that feeling still? And what does your government do in order to counteract it? The other question contradicts the first. There's a very important development in Lithuania. I teach at Yad Vashem, and many of my students some of my students every semester are Lithuanian teachers. It's a sheer pleasure to teach them. You don't have to convince them of what I just said before. They know it very well. And there are other signs of important contributions of Lithuanian academics and diplomats. Diplomats in the framework of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IRA, where your government is represented by a very strong and very important and very positive delegation. How strong is that? Does that really represent the population, or does it not? And to what extent, where do you see the dynamics going? My third question has nothing to do with either Jews or the Holocaust, but purely with Lithuania. According to what I know, and maybe I'm wrong, there seems to be a population drain, a decline of the total population. You are a small country, 2.8 million people. And the drain seems to be of young, intellectual Lithuanians who seek other places in the West, from Germany and France and Britain to the United States and Canada. And first of all, is that correct, what I'm saying? Secondly, how do you explain that? Is it just the economic advantages of the West? Or is it perhaps also a fear of your neighbor? Some people may not be quite convinced of the well-known liberal humanitarian instincts of Mr. Putin. So is that perhaps a flight from a danger as well as economic advantages? Those are my three questions. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll start with last question. Of course, we're not happy when people leave, but I would remind, I think it's natural process. Wrong are those who say that, well, it's a problem, a challenge trying to blame those who are leaving, because in 2004, when we joined the European Union, one of the reasons why we did that, were these 4 freedoms, including freedom of movement. And we wanted our young people especially to travel, to see foreign countries, to train, to study, to get jobs. Definitely it was one of the tasks, it's one of the privileges. We wanted to do it. Now, our society is quite vibrant, I would say, and even physics, there are very simple principles. When we joined the European Union, average of our living standards were 52% of European average, 52%. Now it's 74. Time will come, will be even more. And people are already starting to come back. Some provinces more than leaving, some not. But this is natural process, so I really have no problem here. And those who are leaving, those whom I know, very few, saying that they left forever. The majority saying that they will be back. Well, they don't know, but I hope they will be. In other cases, our small nation is really very attached to the homeland. There are sentiments, and people, when they're leaving, they do not feel at home everywhere. They really are trying to come back. This is also, but sentiment should be backed by reality. And as I said, this is really something which will change in the future. Eventually, I have no doubt about that. No doubt. And this drain, as you said, of intellectuals, not only intellectuals, frankly speaking, also bad people are leaving. everyone trying to look for better opportunities, maybe. But this is really reality. This is not a problem. This is a challenge. When it comes to the events you mentioned, I can assure you, in short, from time to time happening. But it's very important to to react immediately, to react on the highest level, by government, by Prime Minister, by myself. I'm doing that immediately if something happening. Because what is happening is not shared by public at large. If there are some events, it's not shared by majority of people. It's not natural. It's not natural. I would say in my country, in my history, tolerance to the religions, to the nations, various nations, were always one of the major features. During the time of 14th century, Grand Duchy of Lithuania, you would look into the history, you'll see that this always was natural. And even Jewish life, Jewish culture, Jewish population, they were always very friendly to my country, and my country was quite friendly to Jewish people because they created their life in Lithuania. And Vilnius is called, as Yiddish said, Vilna. Vilna is called Northern Jerusalem. Of course, now it's not history, it's something changed due to the dramatic period of World War, and really we are condemning Nazis and also Lithuanian collaborators who did that crime. And that will never disappear, that will never be forgotten, never will be forgiven. But as I said, now new generation coming, and they really do not share anything like that, anything like that. And I have no doubt that we can look at the future with the optimism, consolation, and that's the only way to go. Not forgetting what happened, but looking to the future and trying to create that future together. Yes, Professor Bauer.
Mr. Prime Minister, this is a follow-up question to the third question of Professor Bauer. We're following from here what's happening in your region and in the Baltic region generally. There is now a NATO exercise. There is a massive Russian Zapad exercise in the West. And my question is, can you share with us what exactly are your fears regarding possible Russian intentions? I mean, to be specific. I mean, we know the problem, but specific. And how do you think you can respond to it in a peaceful and diplomatic way?
We can respond to it with the powerful arguments, because our opponents listening just to the power arguments, they do not listen to the polite talks, and sometimes accusing others what they're doing themselves. You mentioned NATO exercises, but it's not just something to compare, even by far, with what Russia does in the vicinity of my country and the region, on the sea, in the ground, in the air. And this Zapad exercise is also nothing like surprise, because they're taking place every 4 years. But since last exercises, 2013, 2 wars were waged by Russia. Crimea was, I will repeat, was annexed. So all military activity now attached more and more attention by all. And when they saying that their actions just responsive, again, those who are not experts, but those who just a bit know the situation, they know that it's nothing to compare, nothing by far to compare. We have really a lot of capability gaps in talking about military capabilities, and everybody knows that. We do not have our air forces, for instance, because of allies helping us to conduct air policing, for instance, right? We do not have combat ships. We do not have a lot of things. Air defense also quite weak, we're talking about that. But we have concentration of Russian forces around the region. In the western military district, they have 300,000 additional troops. And now during these exercises, they're declaring that they will take part less than 13,000 because of Vienna document. There are different rules, how many observers you have to invite, and how you should deal with this. But we know from the experience that there will be many segments of exercises related, but they're not officially, so to say, stated like that, and we're up to 100 troops with offensive scenario. At the same time, we have reinforcement by our allies, which is really, I can mention, which is, sounds a bit really very symbolic. 1,000 soldiers, 1 battalion, multinational battalion. It's very important. We value very much that response, but it's by far nothing to compare. So what is done is just done minimum, but sufficient to deter, to say that we do care about the security of our allies. They do care as well, our friends, security of Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. And we value that very much. But it's again, we said not once, we are not going to compete, we are not going to escalate, but we will do everything necessary to make sure that we do care about our security. somebody thinks otherwise, they are wrong, simply. But this is again, I'll come back to the first argument, the only way to send a message. Because polite talks make no impression. With our friends in Russia, usually, if you're trying to be flexible and polite, that's received as a weakness, not as a way to talk. And immediately, this weakness used to continue with the policy of aggressiveness. And that's facts. Facts simply we should know. And in our midst, in our community, European discussions, more and more understanding about that. But again, this understanding comes through personal experience, not just like that. You know, if something, as a human being, if something happening personally to you, you understand it's bad, it's wrong, it's painful. Is something happening a bit far away? Maybe it's not so bad, or maybe not happening at all, same as it was during the Ukrainian war. And I would distinguish period before MH17 downing the plane, if you remember, and after. After, it was shock in some Western countries, especially Netherlands, and said, what happened? And we said, what should happen? Say got these lessons, but it happened what it's supposed to happen because of situation. But again, through that experience, we getting something more. So I'm really by far, I'm not inviting to any aggressiveness, never, ever. But we must be consistent. We must respect our own decisions. We must share responsibility of what happened. We cannot blame ourselves for occupation of Georgia or Ukraine. We cannot blame ourselves for what Russia doing in Syria. We didn't discuss yet, but you know what I mean. But we should share responsibility, because if we have potential to influence and not doing that because of some pragmatic or whatever reasons, we should share responsibility. It's not comfortable, but it's reality, we have to admit. So, a bit answering to the questions a bit more far away, but believe me, these exercises, this is really demonstration of arguments of power, military arguments. If other arguments not working, so these arguments can work, because potentially that country is really not so powerful. GDP less than France, less than Italy. Nuclear weapons makes a difference, of course. This is also an important factor. Same as now we're talking with North Korea, everyone all over the world in mess, how to react. This is reality, but we have to be really united here in our policy and understanding, and making our arguments understandable to the other side. And politesse will not work here. Strong, clear arguments can make a difference. If united, if not split, as it's also a big question sometimes.
Okay, I just want to follow up before we go further on that question, on the political and perhaps also the economic side. How right are we in saying that there are a sort of beginning of a sub-unit inside the big Europe, of middle Europe,
European Union?
Within the European Union, yes. Your countries and neighboring countries in the central field.
You know, the reality is that those who know European Union, you know that there are already several speeds existing. We have Schengen zone, my country belongs to, some countries not. Even Norway, not member of the European Union, they belong to Schengen, for instance. So Schengen zone is also kind of one speed, right? Reflects movement, freedom of movement. Also there are Eurozone countries, same as also my country. All Baltic states are members of Eurozone. Some members of European Union, not members of Eurozone. Again, different. Military cooperation. Some members, majority members of European Union are members of NATO. Some not. Again, different pace and activity with regard to military cooperation. Some European Union countries have caveats for more active military cooperation. So I would say it's already sufficient speeds. It will play too much with this multi-speed approach. It's my personal opinion. That will be a decentralized factor. It will not strengthen our cohesion. But on the other hand, we cannot prevent countries to do what they want to do if they're capable to do. My country would like to be among those who are doing, to do the best in order to make sure that we will be part of this common policy. So we would like to see this process as inclusive as possible, not to prevent others. How it will look in the future? Probably it will look exactly like that, because there are already many speeds existing, and this is reality. We cannot deny mind, maybe it's not bad, by the way, at the same time. But important not to overplay, not to so to say, put more emphasis on this differences because of the reality, because of the situation we are now today. It's not easy, and this easiest part is not given.
Mr. Prime Minister,
Not yet, but I'm thinking about it. Thank you.
I want to say to you that we have very much appreciated what you've spoken, and I think the relationship between your country and Israel is something that we're all very, very pleased with. But I'm sorry if I'm going to go back and follow up on Professor Bauer, because when we talk about Lithuania outside the Israeli context, as Jews, the one thing that comes to our mind are the horrors that our people underwent because of collaborations in your country. Now, I fully agree with you that we must look forward to the future, but in order to look forward to the future, I think we must face the past. And I have to ask you, are your children being educated in your schools about what took place and the horrors that took place and the fact that there were indigenous citizens that behaved like animals in your country during the Second War?
I can answer you directly as you asked. I have two daughters, and they, believe me, have zero tolerance to any discrimination, racism, not only with regard to Jews, but everything, LGBT, you name it, everything. I have sometimes even difficulties to discuss some matters, but this is really true, because it's a new generation coming. And again, I said that we should look to the future, but I also said that we should remember what happened. And we should, trust modern generation, which is also remember, and will never repeat, I have no doubt, will never repeat what happened in that period, but also will be ready to go to the future. That's not less important. You know, when I was here with a visit a few years ago, I visited Yad Vashem. We discussed how interesting and useful are programs to our teachers. They're coming to Yad Vashem, getting some information, using that in the curriculum in the schools. And we discussed that. That's also part of what we have to focus on. And I'd like to know what I always remember. It was a big article in Jerusalem Post about our visit, a picture from Yad Vashem. And the title was From Darkness to the Light. The title of the picture. It was, I couldn't phrase better. Darkness, we know what they mean. It's dark history, tragic, to the light. So probably we are ready to go through that, to go to the future. Not forgetting, definitely, not forgetting, but that's important also to consolidate the powers. And again, I'm happy to say, Karina Kuklansky is here. Maybe she can correct me, I don't know, but my feeling is that society is not sharing this radicalism, really. There are maybe some incidents, accidents, but they are not reflect our thinking, our mood in the society, and will be rejected, I have no doubt. That's important to know.
Please. I would like to ask a question, first of all, to refer you to Shadova. My family came from Shadova. My grandfather actually went from Shadova to South Africa, and I still remember him actually saying, even after all what happened, he was very much attached to the place where he came from. Today, we are working together, we and WJRO, World Jewish Restitution Organization, working together with Faina and the Jewish community. And we have the foundation that you know about. There's only one issue that we are still trying to get solved, is the people, Israelis or people from abroad, that were claiming their property, and they couldn't claim their property because of citizenship issues, and now the citizenship issues are solved, but because the time has passed, they can't apply again. So we would like to see if this can be corrected in a way, and I think I also spoke to the ambassador about it. This is something that is on the table.
Yeah, but one speaking, I do not think it will be corrected because already many exceptions were done. You mentioned citizenship. You probably know that it's easier, much easier to get citizenship, to regain citizenship to those descendants, not only those who left Lithuania before 1990, but also descendants, to preserve also current citizenship. It's not possible to Lithuanians, basically. You probably know that. So I'm not saying it's bad. It's okay. It's good. But this is done. Also, this foundation of goodwill. I don't know the precedents elsewhere. Of course, it's not easy, but it will be done in the cooperation between our Lithuanian Jewish community and the world Jewish community, as you know. So this is done with regard to the religious heritage. I'm not sure that we will be able to make more exceptions here. I simply don't think so. That's my answer.
Yes, please.
Mr. Ambassador, I was curious as to what you feel that Lithuania and the other Baltic states can do in order to encourage your European allies in NATO to increase its military capability to resist Russian aggression. I have certain specific questions about it. I'm sure that you know that in 2016, the RAND Corporation war games various studies of Russian invasions of Estonia and Latvia. And their conclusion was, after numberless war games, that the Russians would be able to conquer capitals, both Latvia and Estonia, within 60 hours. The recommendations of the RAND Corporation were that there should be built up a force of at least 7 brigades, of which 3 would be heavy armored brigades, in order to be able not to stop the Russian invasion, but in order to slow it down. Now, when I look at the efforts that are put in by the European members of NATO, I see that there are only 4 European countries that spend more than 2% of their GDP on military expenditures, that being Great Britain, Greece, the UK, and Poland. Lithuania, for example, spends less than 1.5% of its GDP on defense. Lithuania, I think, has a population of 2.8 million. I think Professor Bauer said that also. And has an army of 35,000. For example, to make a comparison, Israel spends 4.5% of it, without American aid, 4.5% of its GDP on a military expenditure, and 8%, and the army is 8% of its population, coming to about 650,000. If Lithuania, for example, were to operate according to the Israeli parameters.
What's the question?
I am getting to the question in 1 second. Okay, according to those parameters, then it could build up an army of over 220,000 people. Germany, who is your erstwhile allies, have 3 divisions, 2 heavy armored divisions, one which has 3 armored brigades, and if they could be convinced to put some of those armored brigades on the border of the Baltics, then that could be a serious impact on your ability to resist Russian aggression. I would like to know what exactly the Baltics in specific and the rest of the Europeans are doing in order to be able to increase their military capabilities.
Thank you. First of all, I have to correct some of the data you provided. As a former defense minister following this issue, and I was among those who were initiating intra-party agreement how to increase defense spendings. And I have to say that this year we're spending more than 1.8, and next year will be beyond 2%, which is already agreed, and it's agreed by all political parties across all spectrum. So this decision is sustainable, long-term, not accidental, and dynamics of defense spendings the best among NATO now in the theory. I mean, speed we're increasing. comparing to last year, a 30% increase of defense budget comparing to other areas of the society. It's really at the expense even, I would say, of other areas. So I'm not saying that it's bad, I'm saying how it's decisive and this is done. Also, we have to take into account the factor that we are not going to defend our country alone, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and we have to look at NATO context. And here, historic decisions never ever been before, because we didn't have a few years ago even defense plans. Now we do have. Now we have all analysis of the situation, of the threats, intelligence, also activity, quite so to say, informed. And I'm really not saying that this 1,000 troops, or a bit more now it's a bit more. We should consider Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland maybe the same segment, because it's the same in the context of NATO defensibility. Now regarding the training, also the same, and we have to take into account NATO, but also separately unilateral US engagement. And US engagement is really very substantial with regard to the weapon systems, troops on the ground. And you know what means US presence, military presence on the ground also creates implicitly security guarantees for some time.
Even under this administration of Trump?
Especially under this administration. Especially under this administration of Trump. And this is again fact on the ground. They're not only making statements, but also acting on the ground. And I value very much contacts with the new US administration. I have in mind the National Security Advisor, McMaster, General Mattis, who was in Lithuania, and he talked very precisely about the defense, about the cooperation, not just abstract talks, but very concrete, how to improve our capabilities, how to make sure that our defense and deterrence is reliable. Or Secretary Tillerson, also to mention. We're really very glad with the current status of the cooperation with the US, just in short. And as I said, decisions made in NATO summit in Wales, consequent in Warsaw, being implemented. We would like to wish more speedy, maybe, but this is happening as we speak. So I really have no doubt when I'm talking to my own public or to the press, and sometimes, asked, are you in panic, are you afraid? I'm saying there's no reason to be in panic. Of course, no reason to be relaxed, because the situation around is not very, very easy, but our people really can trust security guarantees provided by our allies. And our task, Lithuanians, Latvians, Estonians, is to provide decent and tangible host nation support, to provide what we have to do, to provide what we are capable to do, to increase not only quantity of defense spendings, but output efficiency is not less important. What you are doing with these resources. Not to wasting, but to trying to add capabilities to the collective efforts. That's our task since the very beginning, by the way, that was our task. I was appointed first-time defense minister in '93. I imagine that was long ago, where our just dreams to join NATO were maybe not realistic. No one believed except us that we will join NATO. And at that time, it was impossible to create armed forces from scratch, from zero, seeing the challenges. And we needed to choose the way to go, and we chosen collective gain, collective, so to say, security measures, trying to add value to some segments, like special forces, logistics, for instance. And now, after comparing a short period of time, I'm really proud that our special forces, which is brand of any arm, very well, so to say, assessed, working in very hot places like Iraq, like Afghanistan. By the way, working together with Americans. Usually special forces prefer to act alone, because not because we don't trust them each other, but it's really very, even basketball I mentioned at the beginning, if they have no training, it's very difficult to play. They should understand each other by science, by, in the battle it's even worse, we should really, it can lose life. But they are working together, Canadians and Americans trust them as well. And as we speak, we increased our contribution to anti-terrorist campaign, anti-Daesh campaign. And we'll send more special forces to Iraq, just to mention as example. So this is what we are doing in the faraway regions from Lithuania, doing also for the security of my country, because our allies, many nations have engaged in the deployment of multinational contingent in Lithuania, in Latvia, and Estonia. And in my country, Germany is framework nation, for instance, just to mention. And Canada is in Latvia, and UK is in Estonia, and many other nations on board. This is real, very strong multinational response to the threats which are not so to say small these days.
Mr. Minister, I was participated about maybe 10, 12 years ago in the first Israeli-Lithuanian academic dialogue that took place in Vilnius, and it was a very interesting exchange. One of the points that we discussed, the first point that we focused on, was the historical issue. And a number of us raised the point that within Lithuania, the understanding, the attempt to deal with the Holocaust was mixed in closely, inseparably with the memory and dealing investigations of collaboration with the Soviet regime. And that was seen by the Israelis. Those of us who were part of that, we explained it to our Lithuanian academic counterparts as a very important obstacle, impediment to really dealing with the Holocaust issue. And we heard from Yehuda Bauer and others the concerns that continue to exist. The point that we made was that we really couldn't have normal relations with Lithuania in all senses until that connection was broken to allow a proper understanding within Lithuania, education of young people of the horrors of what happened during the Holocaust in Lithuania. Is that combination still in existence, and if so, are any steps being made to break that apart?
I personally do not feel that happening in reality, because we consider the Holocaust as a global, so to say, phenomenon, unfortunately dramatic, tragic, and that's considered like that. But also we are not closing eyes to what happened in other areas to my nation. You know, more than 200,000 were deported to Siberia. Of course people talking about that. Of course we have Day of Remembrance. Of course we also remember our freedom fights, so to say. And we try to distinguish, and we are distinguishing those who made crimes and those who try to fight for independence of my country. The Holocaust, needless to say, it's very scarred on the face of the world, I would say, of everyone, and my nation was not a side of it, so it's definitely considered very seriously. And we also feel some guilt in my former president when he came to Israel and apologized on behalf of the Ukrainian people. That was not just his personal feeling, but it was feeling of majority of my people, because they feel guilt. And that's maybe most important note, not going into details. So that was, as you said, 12 years ago. Come again, talk again, maybe you'll see some difference.
I think I will thank this morning's and the presentation.
I'm echoing the sentiments of everybody in appreciation.
Oh, nice, very nice.
It is a lovely city in the church.
Super, fantastic. Nice view from the balcony of my home.
Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Ziegler, who's an honorary vice president of the Congress, and everybody's invited to be present.